Today we're going to be making sweet cherry conditioner bars. I will be giving the percentage formula as I go through this video, but if you want the written version with the method, that will be on my Patreon. I decided to make a conditioner bar because I've never really nailed a formula and I wanted another go at it, and I liked this one, so I thought I'd share it. The first ingredient we're using is BTMS 50. Now this is a thickener, a hardener, emulsifier, and it is the main conditioning agent. This is what makes our bar a conditioning bar, and I'm using 55% of BTMS 50. Now you can use BTMS 25. The difference between the two is the 50 and the 25 relate to the conditioning agent. So BTMS 50 has more of the conditioning agent and less of a hardener, and BTMS 25 has more of a hardener and less of the conditioning agent. That is why with the BTMS 50 I am also using acetyl alcohol, which you can see me putting in here. I'm using 15%, and this is as an additional hardener, but it does also have conditioning properties and it adds a nice slip and texture to the final product. Then to enhance the texture and add a little bit more conditioning, I want some cocoa butter because this is really lovely for the hair. You could use a different butter, but be aware of melting points and how they'd affect the bar, and also where you live. You don't want to be using coconut oil if you live in a hot country because the bar will just become soft and tacky very quickly. So I'm using cocoa butter because it's a very firm butter, it's very good for the hair, and it's very conditioning to the scalp as well. After the cocoa butter, I'm going to add an oil. Now I've chosen macadamia oil. This is a lovely moisturising conditioning oil that's often used in hair products. You can swap it out for another oil if you wish. It may affect the overall product though. I like this. You could also use argan oil perhaps, but bear in mind the expense of the oil you're using because essentially it is a rinse-off product. Now the macadamia oil I used 7.9% and the cocoa butter I used 10%. Also in our heated phase, because they're not heat sensitive, we've got a couple more conditioning ingredients, one of which is polycortineum 7. This is a conditioning cationic polymer and it helps with hair manageability, comb through, and it also helps to act as an anti-static agent to prevent frizz. So we're adding that. Yes, it is water soluble, but it doesn't matter in a solid bar because obviously you are using it with water. It's coming into contact with water and then it will sort of attach itself to your hair and do its job. The same goes for the hydrolyzed wheat protein. This is a conditioning agent that also helps with hair manageability and comb through. So we're adding some of that as well. And each of those were added at 2% each. And that is our heated phase. So we now need to put this in a water bath to controlled heat it and melt those down. And while that's happening, we're going to work on our cool down phase. So I'll get my little beaker ready. And the first thing we're going to add in our cool down phase is cetrimonium chloride. I really recommend this for a conditioning bar. It made literally all the difference. It's incredibly good at conditioning and also detangling, so it's a fantastic addition. So I'm adding that. After that, I'm going to choose my fragrance. For this, I'm using sweet cherry and marshmallow fragrance oil from Crafterful. I wish you could smell this through the screen because it smells incredible. I really love this. So I'm adding that because I can't get enough of it. Check the IFRA for any fragrance oil that you decide to use. Just make sure that you're getting the right percentage. And then we're adding some D-panthenol. And that's nourishing, it adds shine, and it also helps with detangling. And all three of these ingredients I've just mentioned were added at 2% each. Then, I know this is an anhydrous product, but it will come in contact with water a lot, obviously, because it's a conditioner. So we are going to add a preservative, and I'm using a broad spectrum preservative that's used a lot in these type of products, which is preservative 12 or phenoxyethanol EHG. Then, because we do have oils and butters in our formula, I'm adding some vitamin E, and that's our antioxidant. Both the antioxidant and the preservative were added at 1% each. And then lastly, I do want a little bit of colour. Because we're using a cherry fragrance, I'm going with red. So I'm using 0.1% of this Rockstar Red, I think it's called, from Mica Mama. They're based in the UK. They have ethically sourced mica powders and a very wide choice, so that's a good place to get those. And then I'm just mixing it all together to disperse the mica so that we don't have any little chunks that are going to float around in our conditioner bar. Check on your phase A that's melting away. It will take a little while because these ingredients can be a little stubborn, but once they've melted down, don't worry about the bits on the side of the beaker. It gets easier the more you scale up your batch. I'm just making a single shampoo bar here to spare ingredients, so that's why it sort of splashes up the side. It does solidify very quickly on the sides of the beaker, so bear that in mind. You just want to let that cool down as much as possible. Bear in mind the sensitivity of your ingredients. Most of my ingredients can take about 50C, so we can start pouring them in about then, but normally you'd wait till 40C. You just have to bear in mind and find sort of a medium point between that and also the solidifying of the product. You can see it started to solidify on the sides here, but if I pop it back in the water bath that is turned off, it just heats it up enough just to melt it, enough to pour. It doesn't matter if it's got a few chunks in it, it still pours fine, and you'll see when we turn out the bar later, it doesn't really make much difference. I have got a little bit extra, so I'm just going to scrape that out and plonk that in here. I can use that anyway. And now we wait. Put it in a fridge or freezer away from food and let that fully solidify, and then we can come back and test it. It's now been about 24 hours. I did put these in the fridge just for a little bit last night, but then I took them out and just left them in this room. It gets fairly cold overnight, and they've solidified really nicely, come out of the moulds really easily, and yeah, they seem quite hard. I'd possibly harden them a little bit more. You could up the BTMS 50 and the cetyl alcohol just a tiny bit. But I don't think it's going to fall apart. It definitely doesn't feel like that. It does feel quite solid. It doesn't sort of dent when I tap it on the counter, so that's something. So we're going to use my extension hair again to test it out and see if this feels less draggy than the one I made like a while back. So far it feels really nice. Okay, so this feels incredible. It's so silky, even just in my hand. There's literally no drag. It's actually hard to handle on the hair because I can't get purchase on it, but it just slides down. I can tell you now, the last conditioner bar I tried was literally just an anhydrous bar and just butters and BTMS 50, etc. Adding these other additional sort of conditioning agents to it has made all of the difference, like literally all of it. It feels like silk, this hair. It's amazing. I can run my fingers through it so easily. And as you know, I always test on extension hair because obviously, although this is good quality extension hair, it has obviously been processed and coloured. So it's sort of probably not as nice condition as your hair would be, unless of course you've bleached your hair quite a lot. But it's a good demonstration of how these things work, which is why I use it. And it feels really incredible. I'm really pleased with this. If you get a chance to try this recipe, then please do, because I'm quite proud of this. Yeah, so Notes, I'd say I've written a few sort of substitutions and a few notes in the blog post, along with the formula, all written down with percentages and grams, and a little bit about sort of what I could use instead. And my only other comment would be perhaps harden it just a little bit more, but if I'm being honest, possibly you don't need it. I don't know. It just feels nice and I'm very pleased with it. So yeah, if you want the formula all written down with the method and everything, that is on my Patreon and that's linked below. Otherwise you can just Scooby through the video again and get the percentages, because I do give them to you. And yeah, I hope you like it. I really do. And I'll see you in the next one.